Hi, it's Tony Robbins again. Welcome to Behind the Scenes, the story behind the story. This is for you obsessed people who just want to know everything. So I'll do it quickly and powerfully. You can turn me off anytime you want. You already know that, but I think you might find really interesting to know the real story between Frank and Kristen. Did we fake you out on television? No. Just in 44 minutes, there's only so much you can share between those little commercials. It's not even a full hour when you take the commercials out. So I thought maybe I'd share with you what I think this story is really about. Maybe a quick idea of some of the strategies I use to help them create their breakthrough, because understanding those strategies could help you make some breakthroughs in your own life, or maybe help somebody that you really care about. And maybe thirdly, tell you some stories that weren't in that you might find interesting, and most importantly, maybe tell you where Frank and Kristen are right now, if you're interested to know a year later what their life is really like. So what's this story really about? Well, on the surface, you'd say it's a story that's a tragedy, right? I mean, it's obvious. Somebody goes down and they go for this great wedding, and man becomes a quadriplegic right as he says, "I do," virtually. It's about people losing their dreams. It's about having to, live with limitation. That's the surface story. And if we kept that surface story, then these people would live in the emotional state they were in at that time, which is a life they have to settle for, a life that's less than they had expected, which whenever our life is less than we expect, it doesn't matter what our life is like, we're going to be unhappy. We're going to suffer. So I believe this story is about the power of rewriting your story to change the quality of your life. And I don't mean that in some flippant way. I don't mean making something up. But whenever an event happens, there's the event and then there's their story about the event. You had a relationship and it ended. That's the event. Then there's the story of the relationship. There's the story of, oh my God, I was abused, or they didn't care, or they spent all my money, or they were just into whatever, or they were so selfish. And what happens to us in life is we forget what the real truth is, that you two just didn't match up. Or maybe even deeper truth. Maybe you didn't really understand your partner's needs. Or maybe your natures were totally different. If you thought that the end of the relationship was because you were different people with different natures, that story would make you feel very differently than they abused me, they screwed me over, they didn't care about me, they never did. Why do we make up such stories? Because our stories allow us to feel a certain way, and most of us try to get back to the emotions that we know, or at least we try to lower expectations so we won't be disappointed. Can you relate in any way in your own life? Have you ever been so disappointed that the next time you don't want to get your hopes up? So you start trying to tear things down before you could ever get passionate about it or even excited about it, just because you don't want that drop. But if you protect yourself from the highs and try to never have that big drop, then you have to live in the lows. And that's where most people live in their life. They are constantly adjusting their blueprint of life to something smaller that's achievable so they won't be disappointed. And that's a life where you can be comfortable, but it's not a life where you can feel alive and passionate, in my mind, in my opinion. And so when I saw these people, I thought this is a perfect opportunity to show that these people, if they change their story, it can change the quality of their life. Because how do you know the quality of your life? By the stuff you got? But gosh, with the economy the way it is now, if that's your definition, you must be in a lot of stress, because I don't care if you're a billionaire or a barber, you got some stress right now because the world's changed and there are things that are outside our control that are happening, and there are things within our control. What I mean by that is, if life has to be a certain way for you to be happy, and life doesn't match it, then you're going to be pretty unhappy right now. And if you look at Frank and Kristen, it's the ultimate example of that. But I would say to you that if you got everything you wanted, and have you ever done that? Ever gotten a dream or goal you wanted and then still said, is this all there is? I've done it many times. I've been stupid. I think we've all been that way. So what are you going to do? Go for the next thing? Or just lower your expectations? Neither one of it does it. You got to find something more meaningful. So my idea with this couple was to say, there are people that have everything and are miserable, because the quality of your life is where you live emotionally. If every day of your life you're angry and frustrated and pissed off, and you got everything, you got your ultimate goal, you are the most religious person in the world, you make billions of dollars, everybody bows to you, you're famous, whatever that metaphor is for you, but you live every day angry and frustrated, your life quality is called angry and frustrated. Doesn't matter what you have. On the other hand, if your life doesn't match the way you thought it might be, but every day you live in this state of gratitude for what you do have, or this sense of passion and excitement to see what's next, then your life is passion and excitement or gratitude. Pretty simple, right? What keeps us from having that? Your story. And we've all got a series of different stories. Some people's story is, I was abused. Some people's story is, I'm so successful because I'm so intelligent and I work so hard. your story may be true, but it's still a story. And we all got them. So the secret is, since we're all storytellers, find a story that empowers you instead of a story that disempowers you. That's the game of life. So I looked at this couple and said, what's their story? Why are they miserable? Obviously, there's lots of factual reasons that they should be, but there are plenty of other people that are going through hell by other people's standards, and they're really happy. And so I said, I've had the privilege of living in Fiji for a period of time. I've been going there since I was 24. And I meet people there who most people would call poor, and yet they don't think they're poor. They have the most joyous culture. They're so happy. You drive down the street and people yell, bula, 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 which means welcome, be happy, we love you. And you drive by 5 minutes later and it's bula, bula, bula. I mean, it's like your dog. You leave for 5 minutes to get the newspaper, you come back, it's like you've been gone for 6 months. They're so excited, right? It's just a natural thing. They aren't focused on what they don't have. That's not their story. Their story is we have the sunshine and we have the rain and we have the islands and we have the food and we have our family. That's the story they learn. The story is we're the happiest people in the world. And they believe the story. And so they are. You see, suffering in life doesn't come from the life events. Suffering comes from the meaning we attach to the events. Suffering doesn't come from the facts. The fact is, Frank and Kristen have gone through some severe changes in their life. The fact is, Frank, when we started, had something around his neck, couldn't move anything. And now he's still a quadriplegic. He has some mobility, but he's not out of that chair. He may or may not get out of it. That's a fact. But the suffering isn't from the fact. The suffering comes from the meaning that says it shouldn't have happened. Or because it happened, my life is over. Because it happened, we can't have children. Because it happened, we can't have intimacy. Because it happened, life just can't be joyous again. That was the story. And my goal was to rewrite the story, not in my head, but in their bodies, their minds and bodies. And so what was the strategy? Well, the strategy was step one, get them out of the environment where the story lives. It's hard sometimes to change your story when everything around you reminds you of the story and everybody around you believes your story. Because if they don't challenge you, you're going to keep the story and you're going to keep living and feeling the same thing. See, we feel whatever meaning we give things. If this is the worst thing that ever happened in your life, then it's the worst thing that ever happened in your life. If this is a secret gift, even if you don't know what it is, but everything in life is guided, and even though this is horrible and you hate it, somehow this is going to serve, and that's the story of your life, you're going to find a meaning that says this is good, and you're going to find a way to feel good about something other people can't handle. Everyone has stress. Do you use stress, or does it use you? The story is the secret to changing that stress to where you take advantage of it instead of it taking advantage of you, or use it for drive, or use it for gratitude or something else. So all I did was I get them out of the environment and said, let's take them to Fiji. Let's have them around these other people. Let's get them out of the house, because their current belief system is we cannot leave the house, and Kristen believes if I leave, he could fall over. If he does, he'll stop breathing, he could die, and I'd be responsible. Her story is he's broken, and I have to be there every moment, so I can't work. His story is, I destroyed my wife's life and I can do nothing to help it. So I took them on a journey where I didn't tell them their story was wrong. I gave them an experience of a new story. I got them to leave and go to Fiji. Now, I'll tell you the story behind the story. Just a little quick one, right? To get them to leave the house was, that was a big thing. It may not be dramatic on television. We don't even show it, because in 44 minutes, who cares? But you might find this interesting. I decide I got to get them convinced that they're going to leave the house. Kristen's afraid, if I leave, he'll fall over. He's now going to travel and get on airline and fly 11 hours to another part of the world and then get another small plane and then go to an island. I mean, he doesn't leave the house. It's impossible. Breakthroughs happen when you start to realize what was impossible is possible. Breakthroughs happen when you change a belief. I got to get her to understand this. We get her incentivized enough that she's going to go for it, that she starts to see the value of this, him too, and they step up with a lot of courage. I'm telling the airlines, everybody there, you got to take care of these people. They're special, they're important, here's the situation. Everybody's prepared. NBC more than does their part. And they get to the LA airport, and what do you think happens? They drop him. They dropped Frank. They physically dropped him. Her deepest fear, his deepest fear, he's going to break. And the beauty is, he's okay. He's shooken up, she's freaked out, he's freaked out, but they get an experience that he's not so weak. I would never have asked for this in a million years. I'm going berserk. I'm in Fiji hearing about this going, who do I kill? How could they drop him, right? He gets to Fiji. You can't make these stories up. They drop him again. They drop Frank again. Some guy tripped and fell, and boom, they go down. And Kristen's freaking out, he's freaking out. They make it. So now they get on a small plane. You fly to Fiji, and then you fly to my island, it's a small island. You get on a small little hopper, and NBC's got all these doctors there, and they're going to make sure Frank's taken care of, and I'm grateful for that. I got 80 crew. We're waiting on the island to rock and roll and take these guys on a journey. I've gone to Fiji for 23, 24 years. I went there when I was a little kid, just got started, in my early 20s, so you get a picture. And I've never not been able to land. I've been some bad weather, but you can always land. As they're flying, we get like cyclone-like winds, and the plane is turning sideways, and the storm is coming through, and the people on the plane, Frank was actually okay, but they're freaking out going, we can't land, we can't land. We're all standing on the ground. We can see the plane, and they turn around and fly back to the main island, and when they get to the main island, no one's there to take care of them, so they throw Frank in the back of a taxi, right? So now he goes to the taxi. They get on the phone and go, we're out. This is insane. We're done with this. So long story short, we got Frank there eventually, got him on a plane, the weather cleared, and they had the time of their life. And here's the rewrite of the story. Their story was, we went off to have our wedding. We flew to this beautiful land, and we took a leap of faith, and our life ended. And the new story I wanted to write was, we flew to a beautiful land, we took a leap of faith, skydive, the leap of faith of even going on this. And at the end, we had the greatest possible life. We're closer, we love each other more, we're doing things we weren't doing before. And we took them on that journey by using a strategy of getting them to constantly exceed their expectations. To not have a belief, but just do it. And then you'll find out what you're capable of. So whether it's Frank breaking to his wife, or the skydive, or murder ball, or Frank driving his truck, something he couldn't do, couldn't even get the truck built together when he was supposedly able-bodied, we're going to get him to do more than he did before. And suddenly the story is, I'm alive. We're world travelers. I'm a skydiver. I'm a murder ball player. I'm driving my truck 100 miles an hour in the desert. And the final part of the story, as you know, is rewriting their wedding. So you might say, well, that's interesting, Tony. If you're interested in other clips, go online here, and we've got, I don't know what we've got. We got different clips that didn't make it because it was a 30-day journey, and we had 44 minutes in primetime television. So there's some cool stuff. I know there's probably stuff there with Frank learning to drive, because before he drove me 100 miles an hour, he had to get in a car with two other guys who are murder ball players and try and drive 5 miles an hour and crash. You might see some other details of some of the work that I did with them. Look at some of the clips if you want, but if you want to know where they are today, 1 year later, I'll tell you. 4 months ago, I got a chance to get this phone call and got a kind of crackly sound, and all of a sudden it's Frank going, guess where we are? And I said, where? And he goes, camping. And I said, what? He said, Tone, our life is so changed, man. We thought we couldn't leave the house. We're out here camping. So here's this man who thought his life was over, couldn't do anything, that everything has changed for him. So I'm feeling pretty excited. This is, after 6, 7 months of them, being done with the show. And then 3 months ago, I got a very different call. And that is, I get a phone call, and this time, Frank is to tell me that he has some bad news. And I'm thinking, what? I mean, they've been through so much. What could be bad news at this point? And Frank says, as long as I've known Kristen, I think 3.5, 4 years, he said, she's had these intense headaches, and they've gotten so intense. We took her to the hospital today, and a different doctor looked at her, and it turns out she has a brain tumor the size of a baseball. And then later they said a grapefruit. And as horrific as it was, and I thought, God, if any family deserves a break, this is the family that deserves a break. It's just, why? Why this family? But the beauty, and there's always a beauty, I believe, in things, was that Frank was strong. Remember, Frank's story was, I can't do anything. My wife has to take care of me. I'm a burden. And in this 30-day process, he shifted to taking care of her. He reassured her. He got her out of that pain. Didn't matter if he was in the chair. He got her through the skydive. He got her through it all. Frank took charge and became her man and gave her the strength she needed. She had one surgery, and it took, I think, 9 hours, and they couldn't get it all. And then she had another surgery 2 months, about 3 weeks ago. It's 2 months later. And I was with them last night, but about 3 weeks later, and the interesting part, the good news to the story is she got another surgeon. He got it all. She's free and clear of cancer. She's great. And the beauty is I went and saw them last night, just before I was going to come film this. So I had to be associated because I was going to be in Los Angeles. They live in Redondo Beach. And I want to show them the show so they'd see it before it came out. And first of all, they were both glowing. I mean, they're so happy with their life. Frank now, he's moving around. He went to the All-Star game. He saw the home run competition on his own with some buddies, jumped out of the car and made things happen. When she was in the hospital, he got himself up these ramps by himself. I mean, he's gotten so strong. But he's psychologically, spiritually, and emotionally strong and happy. And she said to me, And if you met her, Kristen's an amazing soul. She goes, Tony, it was a blip. She said, it's like after all we've been through, it's like, don't get me wrong, I had my moments. But to be in this situation, I had cancer and I'm through it, it's done. Look at our life, look where we are. And she's demonstrating something that all people who take extreme stress and grow from it instead of being traumatized by it, here's what they have in common. Number one, they find out who they really are. They find out, like you, like me, if you're tested by life and you don't give up, if you don't give yourself a story that you're broken or you can't turn it around, if you really live with it, you're going to find out how strong you are. And the second thing that happens, you find out who your real friends are, your real family. Because when you have tough times, all your Facebook friends go away. Your real friends, they're the ones that are going to be there when it's not fun to be there. Your family, you may have a lot of blood family, but who's your real family? The ones that be for you and you be there for them no matter what. Those relationships strengthen. And Frank and Kristen love each other even more because of this. And thirdly, it's almost like you get a psychological immunity from the next big disaster. Not that you don't feel it. It's just like, it's almost like when you get the stimulation of immunity, it's like, give it to me, baby. I know I can conquer this. I don't know how, but I've been through so much. Give it your best shot. And if you've had experiences in your life, I've had somebody say, you got a tumor in your brain, or this business is over, you're gonna go bankrupt, or every story you can imagine of disaster. And one of the great gifts of my life is I found people that don't buy that story and I've learned from them. And I haven't bought the story myself, and you can't either. It's not that the story is wrong, it's just pick a story that's gonna strengthen you and not one that's gonna weaken you. Pick a story that'll make you grateful instead of angry. If you pick your own story instead of life giving it to you or let the environment give it to you, you're gonna have a very, very different life. So that's some of the story behind the story. That's some of what happened that you didn't see on camera. There's so much more, and I could talk forever, as you probably have figured out by now, and you're on the internet probably going, how long is this guy talking? I have no clue. But thanks for watching, and if the spirit of this show touches you, please pass it on. My whole life is you grow and you give. So, and the more you share something, the more you feel it. So if you want, get someone to see this show. If it's not on, check it out on Hulu or someplace else, or pass it on to people. We'd love it if you pass it on. We didn't just do this to do a show. We did it because these times demand people to see new examples of what's possible. When times are tough, and it's a winter time right now, it's tough. People need role models of people that have made it through it so they know they can do it as well. And Frank and Kristen are that example, or one of those examples. And as corny as it sounds in the end, I think it's an example of love conquering all. They loved each other so much. They did more for each other than they would do for themselves. That's part of the beauty of being a human being. So thanks for listening. I hope you watch our stories next week. There's some clips on here. And if you want to take this story and apply it to your own life and change your life, I got a little breakthrough section that's, one of them is frankly 30 minutes and some are probably 10 minutes. So hang in there, but it'll show you how to use this for your own life to change or to help other people too. That's another clip on the site. I think that's it for now. Live strong and live with passion. God bless.